Thank you for joining us. In order to set the human-animal bond up for the most success, it's important that owners have an understanding of the animals they are sharing their lives with. In this video, we're going to talk about dogs' social dynamics with one another, as well as with their humans, and how that should influence how we interact with them. To start us off, we're going to give you a brief overview of parts of canine history that help you recognize what has shaped society's relationships with them into what they are. So let's start by rewinding the clock a bit. In the 1970s, a biologist named David Meach wrote a book called The Alpha Wolf. This book was based off of a single study done in the 1940s on captive wolves. It was so exciting for people to read because not only did they not understand a lot about wolves at that time, but knowing dogs came from wolves meant learning about wolf behavior made us feel closer to our companions. It also shaped how we began training them, as we wanted to make sure we were teaching them in a way that made the most sense for how we thought they learned. That book started a revolution on how we saw our dogs and how we interacted with them that's still pretty prevalent today. Most of you have likely at least heard of the pack theory, dominance, and being the alpha, and some of you may use this knowledge to ensure your dog's behavior is kept amiable and under control. Now let's fast forward a bit in time. David Meach, the same man who coined the term alpha, and whose book swept the nation, changing the culture of dog training and ownership, re-emerged in the 1990s. He had spent the previous 20 years studying wolves in the wild, and while doing so, realized he had made a grave mistake. He learned that wolves in their natural setting do not operate the way he had originally thought, and realized that not only were the previous conclusions of that study inaccurate, but it was also damaging to dogs. He was so moved to try and correct this information that he tried having his book taken off of the shelves. By that point, it was too late, and the takeaways from it had permeated the culture and society so deeply. The reason there was such a difference in what he deduced from that information in comparison to his next 2 decades of research was that the study was not only a small, singular study, but that it was done in captivity, not a wolf's natural habitat. Back in the 40s, zoos were concrete wastelands with little attempt to make the environment for the animals enriching. They did not get to engage in normal, healthy behaviors that they would otherwise be doing in the wild, which means they weren't likely to be mentally healthy. Not only was the environment set up for failure in trying to get a true picture of wolf behavior, but the wolves involved were unrelated young adolescent wolves pushed together into this confined space. Now you may realize this is the basis for a lot of reality shows these days. Sticking a bunch of strangers together in an unfamiliar space with no contact or access to their normal environments. And what happens every time? Conflict. Studying wolf behavior in this manner was akin to aliens deciding they wanted to learn about human behavior and accidentally landing on a prison. If they went home and reported that the human species loves jumpsuits, whittling random objects into shivs, and trading pudding cups for little sticks that can give you cancer, there would probably be a lot of objection to this information being an accurate depiction of how most human beings live and interact. In all seriousness, prison life is not a natural setting, so of course it changes the social dynamics, as the need for resources and survival are much different. Using it as a wide generalization of human behavior wouldn't be a fair representation. So we know why the study from the 40s was majorly flawed, but there's more to explore here. So what did David Meach's 2 decades studying wolves in their natural habitats actually teach him? As it turns out, a lot. And study after study since then has backed up and verified his findings. Wolf packs are actually comprised of closely related wolves. What we would have much earlier coined as the alpha male and female are actually just mom and dad. These wolves, much like in any healthy human family, are in charge because they are parents. The rest of the pack is made up of the parental wolf's offspring, at various ages of adolescence. These young wolves learn valuable survival and social skills from their parents and older siblings, and once they hit sexual maturity, they venture off to find their own mate and start their own family. Sound familiar? So should this. Wolf pups play, wrestle, and spat, and if you have siblings, you may know what that's all about. But there is not any sort of posturing, conflict, or fights over status or ranking. The hierarchy, so to speak, is inherent and doesn't get challenged or require any displays of aggression to maintain it. While wolves aren't humans, and they of course have differences in how they live and function, they are certainly not the picture of what we once thought. Essentially, society's much earlier understanding of dominance doesn't exist. Pop culture's misunderstanding of it has been debunked for decades. Mountains of research have reaffirmed this over and over again. So why is this important to understand? Because not only do we know that wolves don't operate this way, but also dogs are not wolves, and humans aren't either. There is no need to assert your dominance over a dog. You already control pretty much everything in its life. When it eats, when it sleeps, when it goes out, and where it goes. Aggressive displays from you or restrictive rules based on being an alpha are not only unnecessary, but they have an incredibly high risk of scaring or stressing your pup. Training methodology based on this outdated theory of dominance can cause serious emotional and physical damage and strain your bond. What it does mean is that your relationship doesn't need to be full of conflict. We've learned that you can interact and train your dog with kindness and compassion without fear of creating a monster. In fact, we know dogs, like all beings, learn best when they're not scared or stressed out. If you would like any resources or materials about the information we've discussed here, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thanks for watching!